to move well away from the perch area during all training sessions. There are a couple of things we haven't really touched on yet which might not seem related. Number one is food. It's very important that you have the right food for the bird and that it's good quality. And if it isn't good quality enough and the bird doesn't like it, you might have to resort to finding the bird after having lost it. And this little gadget here, which is radio telemetry, should help you do it. Now with the food, as I've said before, we always use beef when we're handling the birds because it's clean, high protein and all the rest of it. But occasionally you have to resort to using something else. This is a 5-week-old grown-on chicken, which I might use if I'm trying to encourage a bird that hasn't fed on beef before, and then slowly switch it over to beef. When you're using beef, it's much tougher than most other meat. So we use shin of beef, and you've got to cut it in a way which is easy for the young bird or the new bird to use. We get the beef cut down the grain. We get a whole lump of shin, and I cut it down the grain, not across. When I've got a really nice juicy bit for a young bird, I'd probably take a tougher bit for an older bird. I then slash the meat, cutting it across, avoiding the fingers, and then cutting it down so that it's almost cut through and diced. So when you have that on your fist and the bird starts to pull it first, it can bend down, pull a piece very gently, and immediately have a good bit that it can swallow. If it doesn't have a bit that it can swallow easily, it doesn't get encouraged. The other thing you've got to remember with food preparation is you'll need a fridge to keep the food in, and most people don't like bird food kept in with their human food. It could even be illegal. And you've got to make sure that everything is clean. This board looks a bit the worse for wear, but it is actually scrubbed every day and disinfected, as is the knife. Bags and gloves should also be kept just as clean. Now with the telemetry, we use an American system. It doesn't really matter what system you use so long as you practice with it before you lose the bird. If you wait until you've lost the bird and then try and work out how the hell to use the telemetry, you are stuck. This is a transmitter which has a battery in it, which goes in there. It's clipped, pushed into the transmitter and held on with a cable tie, or sometimes there's a black bit of rubber. Some of them have a screw top which keeps them in. Once you've got the battery in, check that it's working. And don't just hold it there and check. Hold it behind your back. Then the sound is going to go through your back and you are more sure that it actually is working. And check that the bleep sounds good. That'll tell you whether the battery is any good or not. If you've lost a bird, of course, you must fix the aerial on as well. We attach the telemetry to the bird using another cable tie which goes through the top, and we then put it onto the bird's leg normally while we're doing the weighing. The more variety of food that you use, the better off your bird will be. If you feed it on just one type of food, not only is it not particularly good for it, but you run quite a risk that the bird will only be used to one sort of food, and if you run out of that sort of food at any time, you are in dead stuck. We feed the birds here on beef, quail, chicken, rats, mice and rabbit. Never ever use food that has been shot, particularly not if it's been shot with a 12 bore, because lead pellets can kill the birds. Make sure that you know the origin of your food so you know what's happened to it before you've got it. Whenever we're feeding birds on the fist, we'll always use beef to start with. We may use quail or a rabbit leg later on. The reason we use beef is that it's high protein, it's clean, it's easy for them to pull bits off if you slash it before you put it on the fist. It doesn't ruin your falconry glove, or if you use day-old chicks, squirt egg yolk all over your clothes, which they're guaranteed to do. And it's also more acceptable to people who might see you feeding the bird. The other reason is that you can get a nice tough piece and the bird can only get small amounts off it when you want it to. If you have something that's going to fall to bits easily, the chances are the bird's going to have eaten far too much, more than you want it to. Now this bird is still not feeding, but you can see she's showing a little bit of interest. I keep touching her feet, moving my fist, making the meat move to try and get her concentration. There's a lot going on around her, and that disturbs her concentration. We may eventually have to end up taking her indoors where they will always respond more quickly. But for the time being, I want to try her outdoors and get her to feed if possible. Come on. She's very close to it. Everything that we're showing you here in the whole of this film is just our way of doing it. It's our opinion. It's my opinion. It's what we have found here works best. It isn't a hard and fast rule, and we're not saying that any other way is not right. What we are saying is that this is the way that we have found works best for our birds and what we do here. And we've been here 22 years. Come on. Now what I'm also doing here is not just getting the bird to feed on the fist, but doing what's called manning. I suppose you could call it womaning, really. Oh, she's so close. And basically all that is getting the bird used to you. And that's what takes the time in the early stages of training. You're going to need something like 2 hours a day with your bird for the first, say, month or 2 months before it starts to get tame. The training's very short. In most birds of prey, the training is only about 2 to 3 weeks. That falcon that we're flying for you is incredibly fast. That could be going loose in only 5 days. This is a little bit on the slow side, but then they do take longer because the falcons are the easiest. They're so greedy. But the taming takes time. Come on. If you're worried about a bird going underweight, watch its eyes. This bird's getting close to being underweight. She really has got to feed either today or tomorrow, and her eyes are starting to scrunch up a little. Instead of looking very big, when you first handle a bird, their eyes look enormous because they're so nervy. As they start to lose weight and begin to get close to the margin where dropping them below it could be dangerous, the eyes will get smaller and they'll start to scrunch up. And hers are beginning to do that now. But as I say, she'll feed either today or tomorrow. And I'll stay here with this bird now for probably another hour, which you'll be delighted to hear you're not going to see, until she either responds, or I reckon that it's going to have to be maybe later on this evening or tomorrow morning before she'll actually feed. As I said, I will, if she doesn't feed tonight, probably try her indoors. But it's a great mistake if you try and train your bird indoors and do the whole thing. They're not learning anything. You can get a bird feeding quite happily indoors, bring it outdoors, and you'll find you have almost got to start again. Indoors, they're always much quieter than they are out of doors. So the added advantage of a Labrador is that they make a great footstool. Very comfy. With falcons, you teach them all to wear a hood. You can teach any of the birds to wear a hood, but generally I don't bother with anything other than the falcons, because it's only the falcons that you take out 2 or 3 of at a time to fly, and you can only fly 1 at a time, so the other 2 must be hooded to stop them being excited by the first bird flying. This is a Sacre cross peregrine, and Sacre cross peregrines are extremely difficult to teach to hood anyway. So you just bring the hood in, and you take no notice of all this flat doodle, and you just gently slip it on the bird's head. Now you just leave it there to settle for a few minutes. Don't rush into it. Then you've got to do up the braces. And the mistake, and I do it myself, the mistake everyone makes when they're trying to do up the braces, they're so nervous that they're actually moving the bird away from themselves. So you've got to be conscious of that. Wait till the bird faces the right way. Gently tap the hood into position. And pull the braces tightly, quickly. You're putting pressure down the bird's back so that if by any chance it pulls its head back, it's not going to get its head out of the hood. Now, they don't like the hood in the early stages, there's no doubt about it, but you've got to get them to settle and relax so that it becomes so much a part of their routine they don't mind. To take the hood off, you undo the braces once the bird's settled, but you don't remove the hood straight away. Leave it on there for a few seconds. Again, always take your time. There's no point in hurrying. If you hurry at this stage, you'll just upset the bird. Then rolling motion, just slip it off. Then put it on again. And take it off again. Stroke the bird with it. Wait, face the front, you. All of this is perfectly normal. Make it an easy motion over the beak and slip it on. But once you've started, complete it. If the bird tries to get away from the hood, then it's succeeding in what it wants to do. It doesn't want to wear it. Take it off again. Put it on again. And you can see it gets easier and easier each time. Then do up the braces again. Just take your time. Now once you've done this a few times, the bird will slowly get used to it and relax in it, and you've got to leave that hood on for a period of time so it does get used to it. I don't like leaving birds hooded unattended. I think it's dangerous. The bird can come off a perch, it can get tangled up, nor do I like leaving birds hooded for hours at a time. I think it's very unfair on them. Sometimes it's necessary when you're travelling, but then when you're travelling you will be with the bird. The one thing you have got to be careful of with hoods, 2 things. Number 1, if you're travelling, they can be sick. And if they are sick with the hood and the food can't get out, they can actually choke to death, and it has happened. The other thing that can happen is if you've got 2 or 3 birds hooded close by and one gets unbalanced and flicks its wing out, that can disturb the bird next door to it, who can lash out and grab hold of the accompanying bird's wing, which is why you should never at any time leave more than 1 bird hooded on its own. Last night this falcon fed on the fist for the first time. We're now going to see if he will jump to the fist. To do that, we've got to make sure that he's secure, so I'm going to tie the leash to the glove so that if anything disastrous happens, he can't go anywhere, or if he does go anywhere, he's going to be taking a glove with him. Using the same falconer's knot, which is quite difficult to tie onto a glove, just secure him to the straps. Take off the hood, because they can't see where they're going otherwise. And you'll see when I take off the hood, I undo the braces or strike the braces first, but don't remove the hood immediately. Leave it there and then take it off, so that the bird doesn't get into the habit of pulling back immediately you undo the braces. Put the hood somewhere, usually on the ground, and in my bag I have a rather delicious piece of meat, which we're going to give him a tiny bit of. Yes. Then we're going to put him on the perch. Any old perch will do, but make sure that it's not slippery. Here I've got one specially built for them that is covered in carpet, but you don't have to go that far. Now look, there it is, look here. And this is where we ask him to jump to the fist for a reward. And he's never done this before. Oh, very good. But the reason this bird is being so incredibly quick to train is that I have not handled him for 2 weeks, but he's been tethered for 2 weeks. So he's been on his perch, he's learned about jesses, he's settled, he's learned to feed on the perch, and all of this now comes much, much quicker than it would do if you started from the word go. So this time a little bit further. And again, a very quick reaction. I whistled because the whistle is going to be part of his life. He's got to understand that the whistle means I want him to come, and so you start using the whistle right from the word go. When I put him back on the perch, you'll see I make sure his tail is over the back, and I drop, and you've got your talons all twisted. I drop my hand below the perch, and he will then step back naturally onto the higher perch. Now we're going to try that once more. And then as he's being so quick, I'm going to see if we can actually introduce him to the lure today as well. Although training birds of prey is surprisingly quick, they do have to be under control until they know the job and can be flown loose. So a training line is used. It is called a creance, which I'm told has something to do with string in French. It should be braided terylene or nylon so that it is strong enough not to break and thick enough not to cut the bird. The lure is used to lure the bird back. Surprise, surprise. A lure can be used for any of the family groups of raptors, but is most commonly used with the falcons. It is important not to ask a bird to come too far at first, but also not to put the lure too close, or the bird won't have the confidence to drop at a very steep angle. Without doubt, making in to the bird on the lure and picking up is one of the most important parts of the training. If you hurry the bird, it will end up carrying, and if it does this with its kills, which are not on the end of a line, one tends to look very silly. So, patience is of the essence. A slow, low approach with food offered as a fair exchange is the key to the whole thing. Good boy. To call a bird in, you need a lure. For the falcons, we use a lure made out of a pair of wings. For the other birds, we use a dummy bunny. The reason we use a dummy bunny is that these days we're using only captive bred birds. It's no longer legal to take birds from the wild for falconry. And so with the captive bred birds, they don't necessarily know what a real rabbit looks like. So we use a dummy to teach them what it is we want them to hunt. You can either use a made-up one like this, or you can use a dead rabbit. But it's not always easy to get a dead rabbit, so we use a dummy bunny to start with. This one's called Legless. Has a nice pair of ears, nice tail, no legs. Now for the lure, I use a pair of wings, preferably from a magpie, a moorhen or a partridge. They're rounder, they're shorter, they swing more easily. I don't like the bigger wings. We put them back to back so it's got to be a pair. And where the primaries and the secondaries join, put a piece of string. Make sure the string is strong enough that it won't snap in your hands. And you tie the two together with a reef knot, which is right over left and left over right. You then get a piece of meat, and the size piece of meat will depend entirely on how heavy you want the lure. And you cut a nick in the side of the piece of the meat so that it will fit nicely with the string. The string goes on, yet another reef knot, tied tightly. The joy of making up a lure every day is that it means it's checked every day. The trouble with a lure that is a dummy one made of leather is that it doesn't always get checked each day and the line can snap. You then put the string through the swivel on the end of the lure, tie another reef knot on the side so that it doesn't catch on the swivel, and your lure is then made up, ready to go, looking deliciously appetizing. With a dummy bunny, it's much the same thing. Use a much smaller piece of meat because you want the bird to eat the whole piece of meat on the rabbit. Get another piece of string, tie it round the rabbit, usually towards the head end, to try and encourage the bird to go towards the head, and in that way when it comes to hunting it's less likely to get kicked off. Reef knot number 4, piece of meat onto the knot, tied on good and securely. Not quite so vital if it comes off the rabbit. You look very silly if your piece of meat comes off your lure. And then your rabbit is ready to go. You bung them both in your falconry bag and away you go.